There is a hidden history that's been deliberately obfuscated from the peoples of the world, and that's why I am on the trail of the Nephilim. The Genesis 6 narrative states that the Nephilim are on the earth in those days and also afterwards. If that's true, can we find evidence that corroborates this? I'm L.A. Marzulli. Join me as we go on the trail of the Nephilim. Folks, thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for joining us today. Once again, I'm going to deviate from my script, as it were, and continue our discussion of UFOs. Probably for the next 2, 3, 4 shows, we're going to get into this. Why? Because it's happening. It's happening. It's on Tucker Carlson. It's all over the media if you have eyes to see. This is the coming great deception and the Luciferian Endgame, which is why I wrote this book, shameless plug. But it's here, and it's happening. A couple of weeks ago, they released a Freedom of Information Act document, hundreds and hundreds of pages, all right? In that, it talked about women who were taken, abducted by UFOs and became pregnant. This is my wheelhouse. This is why we're discussing it. Over the weekend on Tucker Carlson, he had 2 butchers discussing cattle mutilations. Folks, we are literally on the 7th rung of the disclosure ladder. The first rung being Commander David Fravor. Second rung, Luis Elizondo on the record stating that we have in our possession metal, debris from crashed UFOs and they were going to test it. Third rung on the ladder, Christopher Mellon on Tucker Carlson. Once again, they've tested the metal, isotopes found in the metal, not on this earth. Fourth rung on the disclosure ladder, our government, your government, my government, that the Pentagon has in their possession, vehicles, off-world vehicles not made on this earth. Fifth rung happened last June. They released a 9-page report on UFO disclosure. Out of 143 cases, 142 of them, there was no explanation. Folks, in my opinion, they know exactly who it is that they're dealing with. Sixth rung happened a couple of weeks ago, and I just mentioned it. The FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act, was released. The women were taken, they were impregnated, they were abducted. Later on, they were re-abducted. The child was taken from them. Days of Noah, it will be like the days of Noah when the Son of Man returns. So, all this is just incredible. The 7th rung, of course, is Tucker Carlson talking about the butchers and cattle mutilations. I'll probably do a whole special in the coming weeks on cattle mutilations. It's been going on in the Southwest literally for years. It's happening, folks. It's happening. We can either heed the words of our Lord and Savior, Jesus, or we can just ignore them. It'll be like the days of Noah when the Son of Man returns. What differentiates those days from any other? So in this particular part of the show, we ran part 1, or part of the video, about 24 minutes of it last week. Here's another good chunk of that UFO disclosure video. You're going to hear from people who, their testimony, and you remember, this is pre-2017 when disclosure was rolled out. So bully for these folks for coming on the record, because even talking about UFOs then, oh, it's conspiracy stuff. Oh, it's tinfoil hat stuff. No, it's not. Not anymore, because we are looking at the fingerprints of the supernatural. We are looking at, in my opinion, the work of the dragon. Time to wake up. You'll also hear from Dennis. He's a pilot, trained observer, and what he encountered in the skies was absolutely incredible. You'll also hear from a practicing psychic, and I realized right away, wait a minute, why is LA having a psychic in the show? Because what it does is it shows us what the other side of the aisle is thinking. You may have a daughter, just like this woman, or a granddaughter, who's into tarot and all sorts of stuff. occult practices. And the reason why she's in the film, to show the contrast between the biblical narrative and what this woman believes. 41 years ago, when I came to the Lord, I had been immersed in the occult. I was at Woodstock. I was with a guru for 3 years. My third eye was open. I had spirit guides. I understand what that bondage of being in that paradigm actually is to a person. So we need to pray for this woman. But what the contrast between what Billy Crone says and what this psychic woman says, you'll see it. And remember, she talks about remote viewing. Some of you may not be familiar with that. Our military conducted and still using it, remote viewing. It's an occult technique. The Russians are doing it. Anyway, folks, we'll see you on the other side, and I'll weigh in and close it out. You had an experience while you were flying. Tell me about that.
I did. I was flying from Lima, Peru to Mexico City.
Okay.
And the captain hit my left arm and said, "What do we have here, Dennis?" And I looked up and I saw a very bright light about 40 degrees off our left of our nose, about 10 degrees above the horizon. And very quickly we could discern that it was coming towards us, directly towards us. And this one light turned into two lights, as an automobile does as it comes closer to you. And very quickly it turned into beams of light. And there was a beam that was pointed forward relative to our direction. As it stopped beside us, as it came in directly towards us at a very fast speed. Between the lights, there were a row of windows, maybe 18, 20 windows that were rectangular. They weren't round, but the perception we got was that it was very close.
So it was pacing with you?
It was formation flying, yeah.
Okay.
And for quite a while.
And how long did the craft pace?
We figured about 7 minutes.
7 minutes. And then how did it leave the scene?
The beams of light angled down about 30 degrees and increased in intensity, and the thing just shot away.
When you say
up
shot
and away.
away,
It just rapidly disappeared. But say 50 miles in 5 seconds while you're looking at 36,000 miles an hour.
It's impossible. We don't have anything like that today.
Oh no, it was, it defied the centrifugal force.
Did you write a report?
Yes. We filled out a form from Project Blue Book.
Okay.
The Smithsonian Institute wrote me, and I think I've got a report in there as well. Obviously, it's something that is real, and it happens, and we should communicate it.
I filmed this video out of the window, my living room window of my trailer, and basically I didn't even realize it. I just looked out the window for no apparent reason, just to check on the surroundings outside. I see this white thing in the sky, and it's brighter than normal. And at first thought, I was like, man, that must be Venus, because this is January and it's in the southwestern sky. This is Venus. And it's like, no, that can't be Venus. That thing is huge. So you're thinking, okay, Venus and Saturn are kind of aligned, like they are kind of right, or they was a few months ago, which makes it bigger. But this thing was huge, and it was, well, I didn't know until I started using the camera, but this thing was moving around and shifting and all kinds of things. So this was on January, I believe, January 22nd of 2009 when I filmed this out my window. It would move in and move out, it would shift, and the object has like some type of, you would almost call them like railroad tracks at the top third of the object, and it would move, it would shift, it would rotate. Then towards the end of the video, it almost looked three-dimensional, and then it almost looked like it was collar bursting and burning with fire. Then it would go back to its normal shape.
My name is Randy Clark, and about 1965, I was in a little town in Indiana and playing music with a friend of mine. Came out of his place, went to put my equipment away, and I heard a strange sound like being close to a power plant. And I looked at the back of my car. I thought there was some sort of electronic thing going wrong for electric in those days. And then I went to put my amp in the trunk, and I thought maybe that the trunk light was shorting out. And I turned around and looked, and right over the street, a telephone pole high, was this silver sort of a, I guess for a lack of a better name, a cigar-shaped craft, no wings, and it was just very slowly moving at a very slow speed like this. And it had 3 lights on it, light in the front, and 2 lights on the side that were amber colored. And I took off running toward my friend's house because it, quite frankly, scared me. And that fight thing, it happens real fast. So anyway, hit his door and hollered at him, and he came running out, big-eyed, bald, because he had 2 children. He thought something happened to them, because I was extremely excited. We got out the front yard. I pointed to the sky, and by this time it was to the would have been a little west of his house, right just out in front of about the corner of his house. He had the same experience. He went to take off and run, and I grabbed him because I realized it was going away from us. And it just kept going down the street till it got to the end of the street. The craft was probably about 40 feet long, maybe, if about like that probably, and probably about, I would think, about 16 to 20 feet wide. Anyway, it got down to the end of the street, and it bobbled like this and made absolutely no noise and just disappeared. I mean so fast that you could blink and it wouldn't be there. But there was no propulsion, no noise, nothing. It just disappeared.
My name is Terry Staley, and I saw a UFO. Well, when I was 12 years old, I was babysitting for the doctor next door, and I came out about, it was probably about 10 in the evening, and I was walking across the driveway to my grandmother's house, and I looked up in the sky, and there was a formation of probably, I'd say about 12 of them. There was, maybe 3 or 4 across, and then the rest of them tailed behind. And the doctor saw me looking up in the sky, and so she walked out, and she looked up, and then my mother and grandmother walked out, and they saw, and then we watched them for a little while. They were all flying in a formation, and then we saw an airplane come through and saw it flashing red and green, and the minute that the airplane came close to these things, they just all scattered.
My name is Dr. Roger. I'm relating an activity that happened to me back in July of 2014 while I was living up in Silver Spring, Maryland. And what happened to me as I was driving home into our driveway, which is kind of a secluded property with no lights or no anything around it, is that I was driving down the driveway and going into the garage and noticed something out the corner of my eye up above the neighbor's property, which is next to us. And I stopped the car, got out of it, and started to take a look at what was going on, and saw 3 or 4 orbs that were up in the sky doing circles in erratic movements up and down in circular motion. It seemed rather odd to me. So I felt no fear, no kind of anxiety or anything at seeing this. I just kind of said, oh wow, there's some lights out there. And I thought to myself too that this is kind of weird, and went to take a little look and walked up to my backyard, which would have been a little bit closer, and these orbs were about 100, 200 feet off the ground. To my right, as I look at it, And I thought that this is really, really strange because they didn't make any noise. It was just movement going around and up and down and moving all around. 3 or 4 of them, I can't recall exactly how many, but there was at least 3. And at that time I was thinking, hey, maybe someone's just playing with our minds and using a flashlight or something like that. But it was not, because the property was right next to us. There was nobody around in the whole area. And it was just, the movements of these orbs was just really erratic.
People come up to me at conferences and tell me stories that they've never shared with anyone else. You're about to hear one such story by a gentleman who would not come on camera, but I believe his testimony is true, which is why I included it here. He talks about deep underground military bases and military personnel working side by side with what can only be described as the Greys. Here is his testimony.
I spent 28 years working in top secret classified military intelligence operations. And one of the most honest men that I worked with, that's about 60 years old, was over my home 6 months ago and said he has a brother-in-law that works in a similar compartment of top secret classified operations, and that he actually works somewhere in the Southwest in a desert area with these aliens, because I was trying to explain to him about what I've been learning through you and through these conferences about what are these UFOs and aliens. They're really demonic angels that are coming in and out of these dimensional portals. And he actually confirmed in my home that his brother-in-law works in another area of the government that we can't talk about, but it dealt with these aliens and that he worked side by side with them.
Did he describe what they looked like to you?
No, he just told me what he has heard through his brother-in-law, who also wouldn't exaggerate or pull his chain.
Did his brother-in-law state whether he felt they were benevolent or malevolent?
We didn't get into that. He was very careful just to give me a hint that as I was explaining things I've learned through you and my own experiences in life, that his brother-in-law actually works with these non-human entities, exactly.
And did he give you is it ongoing now? I get the impression that this was going on.
I still talk to this gentleman who retired and then came back into the world we worked in. And this stuff is continuous.
Continuing. Thank you for being bold and courageous and coming on the record.
You're welcome, sir.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
One thing I'm really curious, you've been following the whole UFO phenomena for a number of years. Do you think, first of all, disclosure is imminent? And what do you think these craft are?
And it's just preparing the minds of the people. And you look at other documents, even government documents, that's their plan. Is they really believe that years ago to spring this on the American people or people around the world at large, they'd freak out. And so you have to slowly, step by step, incrementally get them into that mindset. I really think that Hollywood, too, is being used as that propaganda tool to get used for that kind of a scenario. So that's the propaganda issue and the step-by-step issue. But certainly you look at some other documents, and it's happening. You got, of course, the Vatican's involved in this as well, believe it or not. And also you look at, even just the recent with the WikiLeaks dump. Right smack dab in one of the emails to John Podesta was talking about imminent disclosure, again with the Vatican, working with the countries around the world for a space treaty. And this is the actual document. We're not making this up. There's no conspiracy theory here. It's right there. So imminent disclosure, I think, is ramping up. I hold to the thing that if, in fact, UFOs, aliens, that whole scenario is, in fact, going to be used as an excuse to explain away the rapture of the church, then, wow. We don't know the day nor the hour, but if you see the events of imminent disclosure ramping up, how much closer is that event that the church needs to be aware of? But as far as their identity, it is something that I've had a passion for, actually, even before I got saved. I've been saved 23 years at the time of this recording. But before I got saved, unfortunately, I come from a non-Christian background. I got involved into the occult and New Age, and wonder who shows up when you get involved in that stuff. It's unfortunate. Aliens, demons, UFOs, that whole 9 yards. And of course, the New Age instructed to channel and do that stuff and become a medium, which God forbids in the scripture, obviously, because it's demonic. I didn't know. You couldn't have convinced me at the time. And of course, being coached at these things, you invite them to come inside you, to speak through you. Now, they wouldn't, say that, hey, we're a demon or we're some horrible, force. We're here to possess you and take over your vocal cords. Of course not. The New Age term to seduce people is these are our space brothers.
Because there was remote viewers who were working for the government years ago who were supposed to be remote viewing like Russian spy secrets, and they, much to their surprise, ended up remote viewing some alien entities. And so that's why I think it's relevant that I mention that in my life I'd been developing my psychic ability, and I was working on doing a movie about the life of Jim Morrison from The Doors, and I, much to my surprise, ended up getting some spirit communication from Jim Morrison's spirit, I believe. And why that's relevant is that while I was, exploring psychic ability in other dimensions of reality with spirits and ghosts, or call you whatever you want to call it, I stumbled upon that I could also have communication with other type of what I think is an alien energy or alien beings in a similar dimensional situation as you would with psychic ability.
They're from the star system Pleiades, or they're orbiting planet Earth. You had brought it before, and I remember coming across this in the New Age days. The Ashtar Command was...
Sure, the Ashtar Command, right.
And that they're here to help us in the time of calamity. Well, we know a time of calamity is coming. The Bible calls it the 7-year tribulation. But they spin it. And they spin it and thinking that's why they're here. They're our saviors. Jesus has got it all wrong. And oh, by the way, when you're left behind and you're in those events, it's okay. Just hang on. It's Mother Earth cleansing herself.
Tell me about your encounter. What did you see?
Well, this was before I got saved.
Okay.
And so, not so surprisingly, I have this encounter because I'm involved in the occult and New Age. I'm over there, and I'm there with my girlfriend at the time. That night, the only thing I remember was just like I hear the bang, big, loud thunder clap. And after this whole experience was over, I remember it's like, wait a second, there's nothing on the ground. I thought it would rain. It was raining. I was like, what's going on? So the next thing I know, I woke up from a dead sleep in absolute stark terror. And we're laying side by side there in the bed, and she's in front of me, and my chest is up against her back. And she said what woke her up was my chest pounding so hard.
Your heart.
She's dead asleep, but I was pounding so hard, such a physical response. That
why were you afraid? Where was the fear coming from?
Well,
what's the source of the fear?
Well, the source of the fear was, man, there's something in this room. And I knew something was in this room.
Now you're wide awake at this point.
Yes.
Okay.
And frankly, I didn't want to open my eyes because I knew when I opened my eyes, I'm going to see something horrible. You could just sense it. And just the sensing of the fear was enough. But I went ahead and my heart's boom, boom. And now she's awake at this point, but she's still laying there too. And I'm literally, I don't know if it was paralysis or just could have very well just been, I am immobilized in fear. I didn't want to move because if you move, then they're gonna, what's gonna happen? Maybe I can just sleep it out, but no. But I opened my eyes, and her shoulder's right here. I opened my eyes, and I saw two beady eyes staring at me. They were like glowing. I don't remember what color, red or green or whatever. But it was just like, oh no. And then man, my heart's really going down.
Jesus warns us that even the elect would be deceived if that were possible. So when we come to scripture like that, do we just turn the page, or do we ruminate on it? Do we think about it? Do we want, what is he talking about? Well, when we go back into the biblical prophetic narrative and look at the days of Noah, because Jesus warns us it'll be similar to the days of Noah when he returns. What, pray tell, does that mean? This is why it's so important. Our very first show on the PTO network delved into the Genesis 3:15, Genesis 6, the Tower of Babel. We covered all that. And I hope you can watch show number 1 because it sets up everything that we're doing on a weekly basis here and also on my daily show. Folks, Jesus also warns us that men will faint from fear. Men and women will faint from fear from what is coming upon the earth. Why does he warn us? Think about those two statements. Even the elect would be deceived if that were possible. Men and women fainting from fear for what is coming upon the earth. Paul admonishes us that the dragon, Satan, will come with all signs and lying wonders. We have to come to grips with this. If we are truly in the end of days, the last days, and the return of Jesus is imminent, we're right on track. Because in my opinion, this whole UFO phenomena bears the fingerprints of the dragon. All of it does. All of it does. And they are creating hybrid entities. As strange as that may sound, they are, in fact, modern day Nephilim. UFOs are real, burgeoning, and not going away. Stay tuned next week as we present the last part of the show, and then I will weigh in and sort of break it, sort of reiterate some of the high points of the film. It's that important. Meanwhile, folks, thanks so much for watching.
Thank you for watching On the Trail of the Nephilim with L.A. Marzulli. Did you know that you too can go on the trail with L.A. without ever leaving your house? All you need to do is hop on the net and type in onthetrailwithla.com. This will take you to our site where you can download the On the Trail videos or you can purchase the DVDs. That's onthetrailwithla.com. There is a history that has been deliberately hidden from the peoples of the world. The On the Trail series will bring the Bible to life in ways that you've never could have imagined. So go to onthetrailwithla.com and order now. This series will take you to faraway places with ancient ruins that LA often says are the fingerprints of the supernatural. And that's why he's on the trail. LA will be back next week with another exciting episode of On the Trail of the Nephilim. Thanks for watching.
I'll be back next week with another exciting episode of On the Trail of the Nephilim.